Hi there. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are on our 27th season of this show, and we've yet to be convinced that any god or gods exist. If you think that you have the argument or the evidence that we've been waiting for, then call in, because the show starts right now. Hello, and welcome to the Atheist Experience. My name is Forrest Valkai, and I'm joined today by Paulogia. Paul, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, and you can just call me Paul. That would work work very well.
That's actually way more helpful because I'm never sure whether to put the accent on the Ogia or Ogia or like where it's supposed to be. You know what I mean?
No one gets it right, not even me. So no, we're going with Paul today.
Paul works for me as well. Before we get started, I got to let everybody know that the Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And with that little tidbit of information out of the way, Paul, are you ready to just jump straight into calls?
Let's do it. Can't wait.
Cool. So we've got a bunch already on the line, but we still do have some other lines open. So if anybody wants to call in, please do so. We're going to start off with Omar, pronouns he, him, calling in from California, wants to talk about physics and his belief in God. Omar, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good, doing good, man. How you doing, Forrest and Paul?
We're doing well.
Really good, man. Fantastic. So what exactly did you want to talk about?
So I guess I wanted to call up, and I guess what I want to do is I kind of have like my reason for my belief in God, and what I would say is I kind of am trying to translate it into the language of science and just kind of present that and just get your opinions on what you think about that.
Sure. Yeah, lay it on us, man.
Okay, so I guess essentially it's kind of based on the law of conservation of energy, which I guess, derives from Noether's theorem, but basically this concept, when I look at this law and I think to myself, if I accept it as a fact, which as far as I know, we accept it as a fact, what this law tells me is that if energy can't be created or destroyed, I feel like therefore I can then make the claim that nature cannot create itself. And the reason I can make that claim is because for nature to have created itself, it would have to directly violate that law. And so then I see this kind of contradiction, which tells me, I guess I can't make a positive claim that God created nature, but I feel like I could kind of make the claim nature cannot create itself. Therefore, the origins of the universe must be supernatural because the origin cannot be natural because of that contradiction. So yeah, I guess that's kind of how I see stuff. And you're a scientist, so I'm just curious to what do you think about the way I think.
So I've got a million things, but I see Paul's bursting at the seams. So I'll let you go first.
well, Omar. First of all, thank you, Forrest. Yeah, we'll let the amateurs speak first. I'm not sure what makes you think that cosmologists or people who work in the field think that because of the law of conservation, that energy ever was created and that energy had a beginning. So when we're talking about the Big Bang cosmology, for example, that goes back to a singularity. It was the start of our instantiation of space-time, but it wasn't the start of energy and matter. So we in order for something to expand, it had to have been there. So you're immediately jumping to something that actually physicists and scientists, as best as I can tell, don't actually hold, and that is that there ever was something like nothing. And in fact, that law of conservation of energy tells us energy can't be created nor destroyed. So what makes us think that energy was created? Does that make sense to you? Like, if energy was eternal, and that's what I think, energy was, and eternal doesn't mean infinite in the sense of infinite regress. We don't know what cosmology looks like absent time, right? Time started at the Big Bang. So energy may well have been eternal, not entropying at all, because entropy requires time again. So I guess no one that I'm aware of is making the claim that the universe created itself. Are you aware of, do you think that's what we think, or did you hear someone say that? And I'll hand it off back to Forrest.
No, No, I don't think I ever necessarily heard that directly, but I guess it's the way I kind of see it. Like the way I see it is I cannot positively prove that God created the universe, but it's kind of like through deduction I've come to that conclusion. And the reason I guess I feel like I don't view as anything have being there for any kind of eternal amount of time is because, at least the way I understand it, is although infinity does exist in mathematics as a concept and as a potential, from what I understand, it does not exist in actual reality. And I was listening to a physicist named Sabine Hossenfelder, and she was talking about how essentially this is what she said, the same thing that I'm saying. I don't know if that makes it true, but just to give some, just to let you know where I'm coming from, you know.
Yeah, well, physicists don't really know what, like, that's why physicists talk about eternal rather than infinite, right? Or at least that's my impression, that there's a distinction to be made was what happens when there isn't time operating versus in time, then we're talking about infinite regresses. And of course, God would not be exempt from those things, right? So we're both talking about what do we imagine our brute fact is. We either have a brute fact of God or a different brute fact, because something has to terminate the infinite regress. So you are positing one more thing than I'm positing, I would say. And, you know, by Occam's razor on that front, it seems like I have the high ground in terms of I'm positing one fewer assumption. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess the reason I would say is the reason I start to insert God into the equation is because, well, I'm saying that, or because the way I see it is like, well, it can't be something natural in the sense that it cannot be something bound by natural laws, specifically the law of conservation of energy. So I take a raw kind of definition of God as being supernatural, or to say unbound by natural laws. And so that's where I guess the God concept comes into play. Does that make sense?
I get entirely where you're coming from. And like the problem that I have with it, there's a couple of them. So first of all, when we talk about like the Big Bang, for example, we are talking about what happened after the very beginnings of the universe. You know, the term Big Bang, I've said multiple times, I hate the phrase Big Bang because it sounds like there was an explosion somewhere in space and then all the planets came out of that explosion. That's just not what we're saying. A better way to say it would be the everywhere stretch, because that's what we're actually talking about, is that the entire universe is expanding and cooling down from this point of being condensed into a singularity. To ask what happened before that makes no sense. To talk about, you know, what caused that doesn't really make sense either. When we talk about the God causing this or being external, we're now talking about what happened before time, before the concept of before made any sense, and what happened outside of everywhere, the boundaries of everything, what's beyond that, and that's where the thing that happened before time started. You know what I mean? It very quickly gets into this tricky weirdness, and that's where a lot of these, you know, theological arguments come from, is that there's this point where logic kind of breaks. We don't have a way to even ask this question of what's going on at this point. And I hear the same kind of thing in what you're saying here. Yeah, the law of conservation of energy says that, you know, energy cannot be created or destroyed, but we're not talking about energy being created with the Big Bang. We're talking about the energy was already there, and then what happened to it. We don't know where that came from, or what happened before that, or what caused it, because again, those questions don't really make sense. So to me, it kind of falls in the same vein as, like, for example, cell theory. You know, one of the three principles of cell theory, one of the three main tenets of cell theory, is that all cells come from pre-existing cells. Well, obviously that breaks down when you get to the point of abiogenesis. At some point, somewhere, there had to be a cell that didn't start from a pre-existing cell, that wasn't born of another cell. Same thing with what we call the law of biogenesis. Life comes from life, except for that one time when it didn't, and maybe multiple times. Very likely, there were several abiogenic events and only one actually stuck and worked out. So, like, when we talk about this stuff, these rules tend to have a kind of a point of an exception that's more theoretical than anything, because of course we haven't gone back and looked at it and we can't recreate it at this point. But logically, it kind of makes sense that there would be this sticking point to it. And a lot of the time, like when we talk about the Big Bang, we don't really have the proper way to even ask the question of what that could possibly be. For you to now throw God into the mix here, like Paul was saying, you're now having to add on something new. We know for sure that this Big Bang happened. We know for sure how it works. We have like extreme details of like the first microseconds of the universe just based on the evidence we have around us. And what you're doing is throwing in all right, well, there's this little bit that we don't know. And also there's this whole other dimension of supernatural possibility. And this dude who did all the things. And also he did them this way. And it's also a he. And like, you have like all this extra stuff that you're adding on top of just saying, I'm not sure. And I think it would just be much more intellectually honest and a lot easier to just say, I'm not sure. It doesn't mean you have to be okay with saying, I don't know, but it just at least just say, I don't know, and then leave it there for now,
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I guess maybe if I were to kind of make an analogy with, you brought up evolution and abiogenesis. So, if we look at...
I just brought up abiogenesis, not evolution.
I'm sorry, what's that?
I just brought up abiogenesis, not evolution.
Oh, yeah, correct. But okay, but well, let me talk about evolution and tracing that back to abiogenesis.
Sure.
The same way we could kind of look at cells coming from cells, and then we know abiogenesis must have happened. We just don't know how. I mean, there's a lot of questions we still need to answer, but we do know that process must have happened. The same way, it's like, so I'll kind of look at, the universe, or I guess you could say, the creation or whatever you want to say of the universe. If we keep going back in time, I guess the one thing is I feel like I can confidently say that at some point that law was broken. I guess, well, the reason I say that is because how I mentioned earlier, I don't believe it's possible to have an eternal past. Now you did mention we're getting into a weird area where kind of time and space doesn't exist, which is, as human beings, we'll never able to properly comprehend that. But I guess, that right. I do feel like that's why I can make that claim, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but like just like really, if you break down what you just said, this is an area that we don't understand something. Therefore, it's okay that I say it was magic. And I just don't agree with you on that. This is an area where we don't understand something. Therefore, we should learn more about it before making any claims about it. I don't think it's reasonable to just insert, I have this presupposition of this God that I've heard about. If you hadn't heard about this God, probably wouldn't feel this way, but whatever, you thought about this God because somebody told you about this God, and here's a nice little pocket of ignorance where I can fit this God into. And like that just isn't how thinking works for me.
Mm-hmm. But can I say that, okay, look at this area and I'm inserting God, but really what I'm doing is I'm showing the impossibility of it to have been a natural process, because it would have to directly break that law. Because in order for it to be a natural process, it's a contradiction to say that it arose of its own means and it cannot create nor destroy energy. Those are contradictory statements.
Right, but the fact is, like, what you're talking about here is what happened. Like, again, like I said a minute ago, you're asking what happened before the Big Bang. I would ask you, when did that happen? Because the question of when doesn't make sense before time started. It doesn't make any sense. And like, here's the thing, I'm a biologist. I'm not a cosmologist. I'm not a physicist. I'm none of those things. There are people whose job it is to study this for a living who aren't perturbed by the question that you're bringing up. So like, Lawrence Krauss wrote that book called The Universe from Nothing, where he talked about how it is in the universe's nature to create itself. And here's his reasons why. And I am, again, not in that field of science. So they're outside of the realm of my understanding. I didn't read that book. I would like to, but I know it's a thing.
Yep.
Oh, you have? Was it good?
It's good. I'm angry by the title because the point of the title, it was a clickbait title because point was to say there never was nothing.
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing. I should clarify. I did read the book, but I like half-ass read it when I was like 22. So I didn't really read the book. But like what I'm saying is like there's there are people whose whole job it is to study this stuff at a professional academic way, and they seem to be able to grapple with this just fine. So like that it's not to say just because a physicist disagrees that means you're wrong. Of course that would be ridiculous. But like the fact of the matter is, I, with my tertiary understanding of physics, can be okay with this. People who study physics for a living are okay with this. People who study the Big Bang for a living are okay with this. Clearly, there's a gap in all of our understanding here as far as what happened before the Big Bang, because again, the question before doesn't make any sense. But I think trying to cram your God into that gap and then say you can't think of any other better reason, therefore it works, like that doesn't really fly in a scientific sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least the way I understand it and the way I see it, like I feel like to you it comes off like I'm making a God of the gaps type argument where I say I don't know, therefore God. But the way it sounds to me is I do know, therefore God. And what do I know? I do know it can't be via natural means. That much I know. And at
but
least
you don't know that though, is the thing, is what I'm trying to get across to you. You don't know that. You're just positing that. You're just saying that.
Mm-hmm. So in order for then, I guess the only way I see that I could be incorrect is if we find out that the law of conservation of energy or Noether's theorem is actually incorrect. At least is that the case? Like because
no,
that's why I can't.
Because the problem is, what I'm trying to get across to you is that those laws do apply in the universe that we are in right now. Those are laws of this universe. You are talking about before this universe and trying to apply this same understanding that we have of this universe, and I don't think that's how that works. And again, we're talking about what happened before the beginning of time, outside of everywhere. These questions don't make sense. And the only difference between you and us is that we have the cojones to just say, I don't know, and then wait for somebody who's way smarter than us to go on and figure it out and then tell us why. And that's what I'm waiting for. I'm not a physicist for a reason. I'm hoping someday that a great physicist will come along and tell me what I want to know about things. But until that happens, I'm going to just sit here and say, I don't know. I know what I know from the physics courses I took in college to get me through my biology degrees. And that's it. And if there's anything outside of that I don't understand, then I'm waiting for them to figure it out, just as they're waiting for me to figure out my stuff, you know?
And just imagine how confusing it is for you to call up and say, matter cannot be created. That's the law. Therefore, matter was obviously created.
Exactly.
Like it's very confusing for us to connect those two dots.
Well, because the same way that although we don't know how, where, or when a cell was created, based on our observation, we know that it was created, correct? Like that's just based on our observation.
The word create is smuggling in a whole lot of stuff that we can't buy into.
Yes. That's the whole thing, man.
I don't mean it in that way. Mm-hmm.
Well, then use a different word.
There was a time when the best physicists and the best cosmologists and the best astronomers thought the universe was truly actually eternal. It just had always been there and would always be there. There was no beginning. There was no end. It just was the way it was perpetually forever. And the concept of a beginning made no sense. Then we found evidence for the Big Bang and changed that idea. But we still don't have any evidence beyond that because that question doesn't make any sense. So again, like we're rolling with the punches. We're adapting to the evidence. We don't get to just shove in, this doesn't make sense to me, so it's probably magical.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anyway, we've been going at it for about 18 minutes. Do you have anything you want to wrap up with, or do you want to try to call us back again another week?
Yeah. Maybe I'll, at some time, maybe I'll call again. But yeah, I'm really interested in this stuff. And myself, I've come across theories where they talk about space having the inherent quality of time expansion coming from it. But like you said, it's really weird because it's almost like you have to think outside of space time, and it kind of doesn't make sense. So it's like, yeah.
And that's the thing, man, is like, that's the most fundamental difference here, is that like something you said that stuck with me is that you said that you don't think that this is something that we're capable of comprehending. I agree that it's something that we don't comprehend. I disagree that it's something we can't comprehend. I think that science has gotten us a really long way past what we thought was possible to understand. And I think we've got a long way left to go, and we're going to get there. So like, I'm optimistic for the future, but until we get there, I'm not going to make any claims.
See, I believe that it's actually an absolute fact that we will never comprehend it. To me, it kind of sounds like saying, can you picture infinity particles in your mind? It's not a matter of knowledge. I just feel like we just never will be able to truly understand it. I'm a Muslim, and our concept. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm not much of a betting man, but I bet someday we'll prove you wrong. I'm confident. I'm confident in my team, man. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's a conversation for like a decade from now. But like, Omar, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next one. But thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate you being here, man.
Thank you.
Thank you guys too, man. Yeah, have a good one.
Cheers. Take care. It was a pleasant conversation.
It was.
With that, I'd like to remind everybody that I am a professional call-in show host. I do this for a living. I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show that we have the question of the week, the share your experience thing. It actually says here in my notes to say this before I start. We want to give you the results of last week's share your experience question of the week. The question was, last week we asked you if you were to be canonized in the Bible, or what would you be the saint of? And here are our top 3 answers. Number 3, Master Zero Chief says that you would be the patron saint of cool rocks. That sounds radical. Andrew Exum says the patron saint of deja vu. And then again, Andrew Exum comes in with number 1, got 2 of the top 3 spots. Patron saint of deja vu. It feels like I've heard this answer before. Love that. And we've got a new question coming at you this week. So this is a thing that you get to answer in the comments and whatnot. The question is wrong answers only. Why was Jesus betrayed? Paul, do you have an answer for that one right off the top of your head?
Well, this will go to, if people know a little bit about me, they'll roll their eyes at this answer. But yeah, Jesus was betrayed because they allowed Judas to be on the Jedi Council, but they didn't make him a Jedi Master.
That's what it's all about. That was a fatal mistake. I'm anxious to see what the audience comes up with next week, so be sure to tune in next week and figure out what the answer that everybody else leaves. If you have an answer that you want to leave, put it in the comment section, and tune in next week. We'll read out our top 3 from the comments. Also, I'd like to let you know that if you want to support what we do here at the ACA, you can do so in a variety of ways. You can become a member for as little as 99 cents a month. Just click the join button down below the video there. It'll give you access to special chat emojis. People in the chat who have those emojis, throw some out there now. Let us all see them so we know what we're missing out on. You can also send a super chat with a question or a comment that we will read live on air during the show, as I will do now at this very moment. We've got $2 from Christian Alvarez, who says, love the show, Miss Matt, but you guys are awesome. Thank you so much. We've got Greg Markowski, $4.99, sends fantastic hosts today. At least one of them is. I appreciate that. I'm pointing in the wrong direction. Mustache Mac sent $2 to say, thanks, Paul, Forrest, and all of the crew, especially the crew. Love those guys. George H., new channel member, sent £2 to say, the power of Super Chat compels you. Then we've got Fancy Monkey sending $6.66 to say the observed evidence for everything being in flux. Nothing can be in stasis because it wouldn't result in anything. There must have been flux. I think Carl Sagan said something about that. How like we different universes could exist. We could have a universe where everything is locked into place, completely fixed, and nothing ever changes and nothing ever moves. Or a universe of complete chaos where everything is random and everything is nonsense all the time. And we live in this in-between universe where things change, but according to set patterns, rules, and laws of nature. And isn't that a beautiful thing to think about? And then finally, 50 Noakes Norwegian dollars, I don't know, from Ahmad, 50 theoretical dollars from Ahmad, who says, I can't disprove it through deduction. I've come to the conclusion that a supreme donkey must have created the universe, and you can't disprove that. You really can't. You really can't. With that, we've got a bunch more people on the line.
Let's do it.
Are you ready for the next one?
More callers. That's what we want.
Sweet. I've got, oh my glob, we've got John, pronouns he, him, calling in from Canada. Can biology confirm the existence of God? John, how are you doing today?
How, Forrest, I'd like to speak with you. How are you today, by the way?
I'm fantastic. Never had a bad day in my life.
Okay, so I'd like to ask you a question. Did you study biology or physics? Is that your specialty?
Yeah, biology. I have several degrees in specifically biology, but I did study physics quite a bit because I did. So one of my degrees is in integrative biology, which is taking like a bunch of different fields of biology and also some other sciences and piling them all together to get a big, broad view of what life is. And so for that degree, I did do some physics training, but nothing like beyond an undergraduate level. Like I'm just a little bit of physics just to know how things work.
Oh, well done. So I'd like to ask you a
Did you say well darn? I didn't hear that.
I think well done. I think it was a call.
Oh, thank you.
Well
I
done.
appreciate that. I thought he said well darn. Like,
No,
man, it sucks for me too. I know.
So I'd like to ask you a question. If during your studies in biology, if you found something to confirm the supernatural, would you consider it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's all about evidence. And that's the thing is like if I find something really weird that I don't have an explanation for, I'm not going to jump to it must be supernatural first. There's that old like Paul brought up in the beginning, Occam's razor. If I hear hoofbeats, I'm going to think horses, not stampede of giraffes. You know what I mean? Like if I find evidence later that it is giraffes, wow, awesome. But like obvious, like usually the easy answer comes first. So if somebody gave me evidence of something that sounded really crazy and seemed supernatural, I'd of course consider it, but my first thought is going to be there is a logical, natural explanation for this, maybe just one that I don't know of yet, and I'm going to probe that. And until I get to the point where the supernatural explanation is the only explanation that I possibly have, then I'll start to actually give some credibility to that. But that would take a lot to get there.
Okay. But see, I've noticed that the conflict or the argument between faith and science has been going on for years, decades. What do you think is the cause of that, despite all the evidence? I'd like to know.
It's the fact that faith and science are not compatible. The point of science is to do away with faith. And it's not not just saying like faith in any creator, it's the concept of faith, believing something just because you want to believe it. Faith is believing in something in spite of the fact that you don't have evidence for it. If you had evidence for it, you wouldn't have faith. That couldn't possibly be the case. And so after the Enlightenment, we started looking for evidence more than just desire and belief. And that's the reason why we don't believe in a lot of things. We don't believe that the earth is flat because we found evidence showing that it isn't. We don't believe in, spirits causing diseases. The term malaria, the word actually means bad air because it was believed that the air of the night was poisonous and would cause this disease. And then we learned it's actually caused by a parasite, and now we can treat it and fix it. And so like the point of scientific study, the point of the whole endeavor of science is to get away from faith and to only believe in things that you have evidence for, and to question, it's what my shirt says today, to question absolutely everything and make sure that you have a good reason to believe it. That's the whole point of this. And so when it comes to things like gods, there's this famous story, which may or may not be apocryphal, but it's a good story regardless, that there's this great French physicist named Pierre-Simon Laplace, and he was super famous for all sorts of mathematics and astronomy. Sorry, is famous for all sorts of amazing astronomy and mathematics and stuff. At the time, we didn't call it astronomy; we called it celestial mechanics, which is a fantastic name. And Napoleon that Napoleon, met with him and congratulated him on all this amazing work that he had done. We have a units in math, or a function in math named after this guy. He's fantastic. And Napoleon's like, listen, you've figured out so much stuff about the nature of the universe. You figured out all these things about how planets and stars and everything works. You figured all this stuff about math, all this stuff about how the universe works, but you've never mentioned the universe's creator. Why is that? And Laplace replied to Napoleon, I had no need for that hypothesis. And that's the point of all of this, is that science works just fine without this idea. The universe works just fine without the idea. It's not that we're kicking God out or having this war against religion. We're just ignoring a hypothesis that we have no evidence and, frankly, no need for. So that's why there's this disconnect here.
Oh, I see. Okay. So was that the basis for our religion, a misunderstanding of the natural world?
Pretty much, yeah. Is that this religion was our first attempt at understanding the universe around us, and because it was our first attempt, it was also our worst attempt. And then we found more cool stuff.
Religion also
and so, like,
it served other functions as well, right? It cohered societies around common things, and it also helps alleviate sometimes fear of the unknown and having this sense that something else is on our side. So there's no one factor. I don't think that's what Forrest is putting forth.
No, of course not. But but you're absolutely right. Is that religion is it's a domestication tool for humans, and it's really, really good at that. And so if this is introduced into society, it's an explanatory thing for things that we didn't understand. It's a social bonding thing that helps build relationships. It's a great thing for social control. It's stuck around for an awfully long time. But the more we go on without it, the better off we are, and the more we realize we never really needed it in the first place.
Okay, and what about the millions of people who get solace from it?
That's fine. You can get solace from all sorts of things. That doesn't mean that they're good or true. It doesn't matter how much it makes you happy. It doesn't matter how many people believe in it. It doesn't matter what it's done for you. Something's either true or it isn't. So, like, I, as an atheist, get solace from all sorts of things. I don't need the God to do that. And I don't think anybody else does either.
Right. And that's just part of the social utility we were just speaking of. Like, that's just one of the things.
Yeah, precisely.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for answering my questions. Have a good day, gentlemen.
Hey, thank you for calling in. I appreciate it.
I was curious if he was going to push back on your definition of faith, but apparently he was okay with it. So
that was the easiest call I've ever taken. It was great. Very nice. Really quickly here, we've got some information that you need to know. Is very important. We have merch. That's what you need to know. You can buy the merch by going to tiny.cc/merch/HCA. And you can get all of your AXP t-shirts and mugs and hoodies and even our limited edition t-shirts. I prayed to Joe Pesci because he looks like a guy that can get things done. I haven't seen that before. I love that. You can get that if you go on there and buy it. And finally, we want to give a big shout out to the crew who put this show together. Can we see the crew? Can we get like a crew cam shot going on here? Look at them. Look at them. I love them. That cat is doing hard work. Wow, I'm so happy he's here. And then finally, we've got some more super chats over here. We've got Megan Marie sent $9.99 of her cents to say, yesterday was my birthday, Forrest. Can I get a birthday shout out? No. Then we've got, yes, of course you can. Happy birthday, Megan. Thank you so much for sending us money.
Happy birthday.
Then we've got James Call who sent in $5. Paul, please consider the beauty of coffee tables. Forrest, love all you do. That sounds like an inside joke that I don't understand.
It is an inside joke. That's just a fight between Shannon, another host of this show, and I. We disagree on coffee tables, unless it's an argument for God. You know, like it's like a look at the trees argument. Look at the beauty of the coffee tables.
Look at the coffee tables.
God. Mm-hmm.
That would convince me. Then we've got Jillian Kate sent $4.99, listening while studying for an evolution and systematics exam tomorrow. Oh my God, that sounds like fun. Don't listen to us. My goodness. Wish me luck. You don't need luck. You're smart enough. You got this. Thank you too for your commitment to education. It is genuinely my pleasure. And with that, we've got, oh my goodness. I don't know how I'm going to feel about this one, but I'm going to take it. We've got Steve, pronouns he, him, calling in from Nevada, wants to talk about evidence for God, similar to evidence for mental conditions. Steve, how are you doing?
Oh.
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you guys?
I'm all right.
All right.
Depending on how you approach this thing, because I don't know what you mean by this, and I could be very against what you're saying. So like, let's hear it. What are you thinking?
Oh yeah. So I don't want to turn the whole boat on your levels of belief, but at least maybe challenge an element of what I've heard time to time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to put words in y'all's mouth, but is it true that you guys say that like there's no good evidence like to even start believing in any sort of like God-like thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's long and short of
Okay.
it.
Well, so the leap I'm taking here is like, would you guys consider it real for things like tinnitus? Like we don't have a way in a laboratory to test that tinnitus exists. It's almost all survey-based based on like self-reporting from people answering questions. A lot of psychology, I think, goes in the same way. We don't have a way to empirically test that these things are real or they exist beyond like the trends and kind of the mountains of evidence we've developed over time just using surveys and kind of seeing patterns and categorizations. And that's how we've kind of arrived at the DSM for a lot of things, not everything. That's kind of my thought. If we consider things like tinnitus. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I get where you're coming from, and I can see where you would draw the analogy, but I would push back on it a little bit insofar as like the major thing that like psychology and whatnot has going on for it is statistics. So it's not just, we heard a bunch of people who said this, so it's probably real, who knows? It's, there's actually like real study into this to make sure that everybody's saying the same things the same way for the same reasons, and then those reasons and ways and things get categorized and put into boxes that we can then use as diagnostic criteria for other people. So like when it comes to like arguments for gods, when people talk about their experiences with gods or their religion or whatever like that, those things are not statistically significant enough to be used as diagnostics for other parts of the universe. So they are subjective. Whereas like talking about mental conditions, tinnitus, whatever it may be, those are, they're subjective to the person, but they are actually objective in the real world, and we can actually still do study on them.
Like you're talking about tinnitus as if it's a thing, an object, right? And tinnitus is a label that we put on a category of experiences. So,
right.
It's describing experience. So it's not unusual for, by that very nature, then we have to just talk about experiences, because it's a label about experiences, just like you would say that mammal is a category of types of, some of the animals fit the category of mammal and some don't. But we don't think mammal is real. We think that individual animals are what's real, but we categorize them in certain ways. So like tinnitus isn't real in that sense.
Yeah, it's not like a monster under your bed. It's just a thing that happens. Yeah, exactly. Does that make sense?
That's fair enough. It absolutely does. And I suppose, well, one, I may just be demonstrating my ignorance here, but has anyone ever like approached the I guess the sensation or the reported experience of any sort of divine being? Have we like taken a swing at that to see if there's any like statistical rigor behind it and like familiar threads, or kind of like as we do in psychology?
I can tell you that I was a Christian up until relatively recently in my life. And like on my baptism day, for example, I had the most real, what I attributed to God experience of my life. And many times I felt like God intervened and God allowed me to escape a car crash or find my contact lens or all these kind of things. And so I had experiences regularly that I attributed to God. It's just in hindsight, I realized that I was making attribution errors. Not that the experiences weren't real. And I've had experiences after believing in God that were exactly the same. I've narrowly escaped car crashes or whatever, and you feel the same rush. But when you start attributing them differently, that's the difference. It's not in how the experience feels to the person necessarily. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. Absolutely. And I suppose there's just kind of a line between what's real, like objectively outside of the person, and then what's real to like their experience, I suppose. But that was like the real thing I wanted to bring up, was just kind of that we take these other things based off of, self-reporting experiences, and we treat them as real, and we, treat people for them. Right.
But what we wouldn't do is have someone walk in and say, I'm feeling these things that I think is tinnitus, for the patients to say that, right? You wouldn't have the patient walk in and self-diagnose what they're attributing. The doctor would ignore that diagnosis and then try and see whether the collection of experiences is properly attributable, right? So just like I was trying to say, like when on my baptism, I felt like God was really there in the room. That's me attributing something, as opposed to what I should have been self-reporting is something else.
Right. So even if there actually was tinnitus, there's still a checklist of things to go through first. You know what I mean? Like that's so I can't say for sure whether there's ever been a specific study on like you believe in God. Let's find out. You know what there have absolutely been studies on like the neuroscience of religiosity and on how religiosity affects societies and affects individual people and things like that. There have actually absolutely been studies on like ghosts and supernatural powers and ESP and all these other things. I don't know about that one in particular. What I can tell you, though, is that every single time we try to test something that's supernatural, it remains supernatural. So as to say, it remains outside of the realm of what is naturally possible and doesn't have any actual evidence backing it up, any explanatory or predictive power to it. It's just a thing that somebody said.
No, that's fair. Sorry, I keep saying that same thing because I mean you're not saying.
Well, I appreciate you saying it because like I want to make sure we're not saying anything that's too out of the ordinary or ridiculous.
Yeah, and I don't think I suppose I want to use this as like to leap to a conclusion. Therefore, there is this supernatural thing, but I mean, if it's real to a person, then that could also I think explain why there's such a strong belief in it. And it just seemed to me like there was almost a slight double standard in that there's these whole fields of some sections of medical science and large swaths of psychology where everything is based upon surveys and just sort of individuals, reporting their experiences. And we treat that as evidence for the thing that we otherwise have not found a way to image. Like we haven't created the MRI for that sort of thing yet, if you understand my meaning.
Well, I hate to say it again, but we're not doubting that people are having the experiences. So don't say we're saying that we're acknowledging that those people had experiences, but the religious people were denying that they actually had those experiences. That's not a double standard that's happening here at all. We are merely questioning to what should we attribute those experiences. And both in psychology and when we're talking about evaluating religious claims. Like I don't see a double standard for us there.
I don't. I think it would probably be really helpful for you as well if you call into a show when Christy Powell is hosting. Christy Powell actually is a psychologist and I believe he has a master's in clinical psychology, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong, but ask him.
Or Shannon would work.
Yeah, I was going to say I wasn't sure if Shannon. I know she does a lot of psychology talks. I didn't know what her actual
She has a degree in it. She's not practicing, but she has a degree.
Perfect.
So,
Perfect. I wasn't sure, and I didn't want to put her on the spot. No worries, I'm glad you clarified. Yeah. But yeah, no, you can call Shannon or Christy, and they would both, I'm sure, be happy to dig into the details because I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of diagnosis and how that works, and it's not just taking somebody's word for it, so to speak. It's not as subjective as you might think. So I don't think that the two, like I said, I understand your analogy, but I don't think the two are really comparable.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I understand there's degrees of statistical rigor that we have to put behind these things, not just a dude told me a thing and so I believe them and now I've added an entire entry to the DSM.
Right, exactly. And I appreciate this being the way the call went. When I looked at what is written on this call screener, it's similar. Evidence for God, similar to evidence for mental condition. We oftentimes have some assholes who want to be like, "Oh, religion is a mental condition," and I get, oh my god, I get pissed off about that shit. So I was prepared to be a spicy boy, and I'm so happy that this was so pleasant.
Yeah. Hey, I'm sorry. I just wanted to, bring up kind of what I saw as a potential thing, an issue with some of the common trends that I've heard about. There's no evidence. I was like, well, I mean, we have similar levels of evidence for these other things that we treat as real. Right.
No, I totally, like I said, I get entirely where you're coming from. I think Christy Powell or Shannon Q would be great people for you to talk to about it because they can actually get more into detail about how that kind of thing works. I don't think that it's necessarily the direction that I'm sure that you're trying to draw a connection and not actually dig into the meat of how psychology is functioning, but they would actually be able to dig into that a little bit and maybe bring some clarification for you.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. Yeah, I'll give it another try. Hey, thanks for the time. You guys have a good rest of your weekend.
You too, Steve. Thanks so much.
Yep. Bye.
Super nice dude.
Yeah, okay. I had the same fear as you. It was very scary.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Okay, so we've got a quick in-studio announcement for you guys. If you happen to be in the Austin area on April 30th in the year of our Lord 2023, we will be broadcasting live from the Free Thought Library there in Austin, Texas. So join us for Talk Heathen, hosted by Objectively Dan and a special guest, Blind Limey. Blind Limey showed up on audition day and apparently did an excellent job from what I'm hearing. And then later on, the Atheist Experience will be at the same place at the same, just right after that, hosted by Jim Barrows and Christy Powell. I hope Steve calls in next week so you can talk to Christy Powell. Doors open at noon. Parking is when you can find a spot that's somewhat legal at least, and we hope to see you there. We've also got a couple more super chats that I want to read here really quick. We've got Find the Fool or Fiend the Fool. I'm not sure. $5 for us. Thank you for your channel, helping me work my way out of my conflicted beliefs. You are awesome. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate that sincerely. Got a cool video coming out this month about interesting animals in the Permian. So stay tuned for that. Then we've got Alex Litchie, $5. My D&D game was canceled tonight, so I finally get to catch you guys live. Love your work. Love you guys. I'm so sorry about the canceled game, but I'm so happy that you're here. We've got Powell B sent no message, but $2.99 in Polish money. How exciting. And then we've got, what is that? Epic Eggplant 101. Great name. $5 says, I'm a former Catholic, and this show has changed my life for the better. I want to call in one day soon. I just don't want to take away from the show. Call in anytime if you have a question or something you wanted to talk about. Of course, we always give priority to theist callers, but if what you're talking about is cool enough and you get through the pile, right now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got about 9 other people on the line, and I'm trying to, like I said, I'm always trying to get the theists on so we can talk about it. But yeah, you might be able to get through there. And then, of course, $1.99 here from David Fisher, who also sent no message but sent us money, and I appreciate that sincerely. So thank you so much for sending us your kind coinage and thoughtful words, everybody. With that, we've got, if you're ready, I don't want to jump straight into the...
No, let's go.
We've got David, pronouns he, him, calling in from Tennessee, says that scientists don't approach space-time consistently. David, what exactly do you mean by that? And also, how are you?
Hello.
Hello.
Hear me?
Hey, David.
Yes. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was going to get through. So, okay, so what was my question?
Yeah.
If you could repeat it.
What I said, it says here on the call screen, scientists don't approach space-time consistently, and I don't know what that means.
Oh, okay. So I was just going to throw something out there. I'll just let you know ahead of time that I am a creationist, but I also have an interest in science. And I've, there was a time when I struggled with my faith because of the science, but then I flipped the other way. I flipped towards the Bible perspective. But anyway, the question is this, and I'd maybe address another issue too afterwards. Einstein made space-time famous. I don't know if anybody considered it beforehand, but it was proven shortly thereafter by solar eclipse that starlight bent as it passed the gravitational field of the sun. And so we know that light can bend as it travels through space. Yet scientists, when they try to measure the distance of stars and therefore approximate time based on the speed of light, is it not the false assumption that the light is traveling perfectly in a straight line in order to do a triangulation, to the billionth degree or whatever, which is also pushing it? Is there an inconsistency? Do they assume a perfectly straight line if they know that light bends as it travels through space?
Right.
But the whole triangulation is dependent on the light traveling in a perfectly straight line. Which
So the difference here is that light does. So what you're talking about, gravitational lensing, light being bent by a massive object as it passes around there. That's going to have varying degrees of severity based, again, I'm not a physicist. This is just something that I happen to know because I've studied it enough. But you've got varying degrees of severity to this. So if we're talking about bending around a black hole, then you're going to have some serious bending there to that light and you're going to be way off. But if you're talking about bending around a star or a planet or something like that, not so much. It is going to happen, but not quite the same way. And if something's behind a star to be bent that way, you're just not going to see it, probably, more likely is the case. So like when we talked about, the gravitational lensing that we saw in time of Einstein, we saw that during a solar eclipse, that the things behind the sun did actually, we had this little bit of warping, this little bit of lensing there. But like when we're talking about things that are way far out in space, not that big of an issue. And also, like, if there were something in between us and that thing, we would probably know about it and we would take that into account. And also, when we talk about things like that, what we're more interested in is like motion. And so, like, things like red shifting and blue shifting, I don't think are affected by lensing in that way. So that wouldn't matter anyway. It's not as big of an assumption as I think you're making it, and I don't think that it matters that much.
And David, if I may, I have the opposite story of you. I was a young Earth creationist up until recently, and flipped and was studying science. So you gave me a trigger word there of something that I used to hold to as well, and that is the triangulation, and that of course is a common young Earth creationist argument, is that there is not enough distance between even the furthest points on the Earth to properly, triangulate as you would in like trigonometry or geometry, the three different points and just decide the angle so you can tell the distance. As Forrest just alluded to, scientists do not in any way triangulate to find the distance from stars. What they use is redshift, blue shift, these shifts. And I had to learn this recently myself. So this is why I'm saying the triangulation argument is garbage. That's not in any way how it's used. So it doesn't matter if light is bending or not. What you need to look at is look up redshift, look up Doppler effect, look up those things which are unaffected, or at least not altered by gravitational pulls of black holes or anything like that. Those wavelengths.
I have another question.
But those wavelengths don't change. So, okay, go for it.
Yeah, there seems to be a problem with redshift. Likewise, but to backtrack a little, I do agree that the black holes, suns, anything out there, there's billions of things out there in between that it's bending light all over the place. We don't know. I don't know anybody that knows how many direction light is bent, and sometimes we're depending on a perfectly straight line. And I do treasure hunting from long distances. I know how, like it's a 50-to-1 ratio per degree. Every 50 feet is 1 foot. So it gets way out of kilter.
Do you acknowledge?
Right.
Do you acknowledge what I just said, though, that triangulation isn't how it's used, and that redshift has to do with wavelength? But redshift has to do with wavelength, but redshift is the wavelength is not altered when things are bending, right?
Yeah, so I have a
that's
question
the
about
direction
the
of the light.
Yeah, there's a problem with the redshift too. Also, let's say that redshift implies that there's different kinds of redshift. Okay, the one that's mainly used is where an object is traveling away, and it shifts the light to the red spectrum or whatever. So it's an indication it's traveling away. It's actually accelerating. They say it's accelerating outwards, right? But if the universe expanded or exploded or expanded or is going outwards, which is what this seems, there's several problems. One, if we're seeing it expanding in all directions from the Earth, that means that the Earth is exactly the center of the universe. And what's the probability of that? But the question is this: if it's expanding outwards, if the universe did explode, and it's an instantaneous explosion, for example, and now it's accelerating. But the problem is acceleration is slower than instantaneous. So it actually would be it should be decelerating after an instantaneous acceleration. You see what I'm saying? So there's a problem with it being redshifted.
Yeah, no, neither one of the things you just said are accurate.
Take them away.
It should not be redshifting if we had an instantaneous acceleration in the past. I mean, it was boom, it was there all of a sudden, faster than light, instantaneously. Nothing is faster than instantaneous, so therefore it would have to be slower than instantaneous or decelerating is what it should be, but it's not.
David, I just want to be clear. Literally every part of what you just said has a problem with it. And I'm going to try to like work through it systematically, but I'm going to miss some steps. So like, forgive me. I'm going to do the best I can here. Number one, you said that the Earth has to be in the exact center of the universe. And what are the chances of that? Not really. The idea is that the universe is finite, but without true boundaries. So that would mean that literally everywhere is the center of the universe. That's more of a talk for later. It's not important. What is important, it'll help clarify this for you, is that what we're talking about is all of space expanding. Space itself is expanding. So everywhere you go, all of space is expanding in all directions. So that doesn't mean that Earth is the center of the universe. No matter where we were ever, all of space would be expanding in all directions. It would look that same way. So we're not saying that this is the center of the whole universe and we're so star-spangled special because of it. That's not how that works. The second thing is that you're talking about like, redshift is distorting this light because it's accelerating or whatever like that because space is expanding. So you have these two galaxies and there's light coming off this galaxy. The expansion of space driving the galaxy in that direction is what's causing that redshifting. So it has nothing to do with like rate of expansion as opposed to an instantaneous whatever. Like it's just as long as there is acceleration, as long as there is expansion in this other direction, you're going to have that redshift in the exact same way that if a car is driving away from me and blaring its horn, there is going to be a distortion in the sound because the car is driving away from me. It's the exact same thing. It doesn't matter how fast they were moving now or then or whatever. The motion is what's causing the distortion. And it's the exact same thing when we talk about different galaxies. It's also really important to point out the fact that when we talk about the Big Bang, we're not literally talking about an explosion. We are just talking about the beginning of the expansion of space. And that expansion is carrying on to this day. In fact, it's kind of more rapid because space itself is the thing that's expanding. The more space there is, the more rapid the expansion will be. And this is why we see Hubble's constant. The farther away a galaxy is from us, the faster it's moving away from us. And the way that this is commonly explained is if you think about a lump of raisin bread, right? As the bread expands, the raisins move apart from each other. If two raisins start out close together, there's only a little bit of bread between them, so they're only going to expand that little bit. But if two raisins start out far apart, the expansion rate of the bread is the exact same, but there's more bread expanding. And so they move apart faster, and because they were already far apart to begin with. And we see that exact same thing in the universe now. More distant galaxies are going to be more redshifted. They've got more space between us and them. The space is what's expanding, and therefore we see greater acceleration. It has nothing to do with the instantaneous acceleration. The acceleration rate of space, as far as I understand it, has been consistent. But now there's more space to do that expanding, and therefore the acceleration is faster than it was at the beginning. Does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm talking about here?
Yeah. Well, I kind of do, but it also brings up another interesting question, which ties in.
David, before you gish gallop, another question. About, David.
Yeah, about the beginning, time, space.
Well, hold on, because Paul had a question for you really quick.
David, before you throw yet another thing at it, because this feels a little bit like the normal creation gish gallop. It's like we answered the three things you wanted, and we gave great answers to those, and you have a script to read the next one. And I'm hearing the same talking points. That's fine. That's from memory. Doesn't. You're using the same talking points that I used to use, and but I now understand that the way to. With the... Hold on. Yeah, what you need to do, David, what you need to do is look at these things not from material from a creationist, and this isn't to change your mind, but you're using the verbiage of creationists and asking the questions. What you now owe yourself to do, if you care about truth, you owe it to yourself to read what the scientists say and use the language that they use and try to figure out which one you believe, because you're coming at us with the limited creation lingo, which is not what the scientists use. And it sounds to me like these are things that you could easily look up, and you're just throwing one after another at us. And it sounds like either you've heard these answers before and don't care what the answer is, which is not a great way to have a conversation, or that I'm worried that, like me, you've been taking this all at face value and accepting the view of the science from the side that you're on. And what I would just beg you and love you to do as we wrap up the call, and we can do one more question or however Forrest wants to manage it, but please go look at this from the other side, even if you want to reject it, but at least understand what the flip side of your argument is before coming at a biologist and a computer scientist and asking these questions. So that's just my plea to you, David.
Too.
Great.
Yeah, I'm a computer scientist, but I have one more question, which I think would be interesting, and I haven't read this anywhere, so this is brand new stuff. Space-time. We keep talking about the beginning, before the beginning, and it's a big unknown, But if there is a beginning, then time has a beginning and an end. And if time has a beginning and end, then space-time has a beginning and end, which means space has an edge. And as you approach the edge of space, you approach the edge of time, which would give you an illusion of whatever we may detect.
What?
I mean, just think about it, because I've never read it. I don't know about you, but I've never read that concept anywhere. It's something to be considered.
How is the edge of space the same thing as the edge of time?
They're interlinked. You can't separate one from the other. So if there is a beginning of time, there's an end of time, and if there's a beginning of an end of time, then there's a beginning and end of space-time.
We don't actually know that.
That concept has never been approached.
Right. So the whole thing, yeah, you're right. Like space and time are kind of like electricity and magnetism. They're two sides of the same coin, and they're connected together, and that's why we have. Also was
electrician.
That's why we have time and space dilation when we talk about, like, if something's moving faster, then time and space contract, or time dilates and space contracts. I think it is. And so, like, you have this issue of, like, however you're moving and how fast you're moving and from what perspective you're seeing the motion, distance and time become relative. This is the whole concept of relativity. But, like, that doesn't then follow to the idea that, like, at the end of time, which I don't know what that would possibly be, there's also this edge of space. Like, I don't think that actually makes sense in as far as I understand it. Again, not a physicist, but, like, as far as I understand it, that's not how that works.
If time ends, then the universe laws change at that point.
But we don't have any reason to believe that.
Yeah, everything depends on time.
But David, we don't have that if. Like, we don't have that if.
David, would you agree that
nobody was there at the beginning to tell us what the beginning was? I mean, none of us, either side of the argument.
We just have a tremendous amount of evidence for the beginning.
Either way you go.
David, would you agree that the set of positive numbers is infinite?
If you make it infinite, if you subdivide infinitely, it's infinitely microscopically and macroscopically.
But does the set of positive numbers have a beginning?
Well, I don't know. It's mathematics. I happen to have a minor in math, but
it's not a trick. It's not a trick question.
Start counting.
Well. Okay. Look, you're a computer science. Let me go to vectors. Okay. Is a vector infinite?
Well, you've got a point of angle and magnitude, right?
Yeah. So a vector's infinite, and it has a starting point,
because
right?
It just keeps going that way.
But it has a starting point. Of all the vectors described, has a starting point and an angle. So again, it's not incoherent to talk about. It's not incoherent to talk about infinite things that have starting points. That's just. I mean, I don't think your point made any sense in general, but it's not incoherent to talk about.
From a biblical standpoint, you can say, from a biblical standpoint, a human soul has a beginning, but it has no end. Just like a vector.
Right.
Cool.
Sure.
So apply that same thing to time. Time has a beginning, but it has no end.
Well, no. Time is space-time. So if you remove time, then you have infinity. Only if you remove time.
But what? No, but
Actually,
you just said
I'm
the
sorry,
same thing
the
twice.
The absence of time. What I meant to say is the absence of time is eternity. If you remove time, if you could remove time, which we can't as humans, it's humanly impossible to conceive such a notion. So
what you just did was
impossible.
exactly what Paul just said. That positive integers, I think that was a great example.
Mm-hmm.
Positive integers have a starting point. It could be 0.0000. You could make an asymptote. It could be an infinitely small number, but it is a number and it is the starting point, and then it goes on forever. And you can't, like, that doesn't change anything about the fact that the numbers now are real. So time, that's what we're looking at with the Big Bang. We have an asymptote. We can go infinitely far back to the closer and closer and closer to the beginning of time. But there was a beginning, and now we just go forward with it. And we have no reason to say that there's an ending point to it. Just because it's intrinsically linked with space doesn't mean anything. Space is ever expanding. Time is ever expanding.
Yes, but it's an analogy, and analogies aren't this exact same thing. They're similar.
I'm not saying that it's exactly the same as numbers, and he's not saying it's the exact same thing as vectors. We're just saying that it is possible to have something that has a beginning and is also infinite. Time and space are those things too.
It's possible, but that doesn't mean that it is the case.
Right, and you and I will not be around to know.
It's just as far as the evidence points us right now, as far as the evidence directs us, that's the way that we have it set. So, like, until we find evidence contradicting that, then we can change our minds and say, aha, no, there must be an end. But, like, until we get to that point, this is another thing. Is, we talked a little bit ago about that Universe from Nothing book. One thing that I do remember from it that I've talked about quite a bit is that we live in a flat universe. If we lived in an open universe, the universe would expand forever, increasingly like crazy, and there'd be a while. If we lived in a closed universe, it would have a great crunch where everything collapses back in on itself. But being the flat universe that we seem to be in, we have this consistent, regular expansion pattern, and we have no need for finite limits on the ends. So, like, again, like we said to the first caller, way smarter physicists than I'll ever be are grappling with the same thing and don't seem to have the problem that you're having. And even me with my undergraduate education, I can tell you what you're saying doesn't make any sense in this way.
Well, did you mention earlier about tinnitus, like the ringing in the ears? Did I understand that correctly?
A caller did. We didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, tinnitus, I've done research on that, and it's a simple matter of asking the person what is the range of what you're hearing. Is it higher? Is the note higher? Is the note lower? And I was able to narrow it down to a specific frequency, and it just so happened to be the same resonance frequency as what Dr. Clark said was the cause, which is one of the causes was Streptococcus pneumoniae. She had that right before she got the tinnitus when she was a teenager. So we're a step closer to establishing a potential solution is by eradicating it with frequencies. The pathogen.
I don't know what
should go away.
I don't know who Dr. Clark is, and I know we do have an actual, we do have student Dr. Ben is actually in the back room right now saying that he wants to have a debate about tinnitus. He seems pretty amped up. So, this doctor that we have working with us right now seems to not be impressed by that. I don't know who Dr. Clark is. I have yet to be convinced that bacteria can be cured by frequencies.
David, I hope you're right. I hope you're right that we're close to cures. That'd be great.
There's no known cure, so nobody knows what they're talking about until somebody cures it.
I don't know if I agree with that, but we're going to move on to the next thing. Check out student Dr. Ben's channel and check out his show called I believe it was Medical Mysteries, wasn't it? There he talks about all of these things. I'll clarify. Medical myths, that's what it is. Medical myths over on student Dr. Ben's channel. Might be able to elucidate some of this. With that, David, we're going to go and move on to the next call. Thank you so much for calling in.
You're welcome. Goodbye.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Good guy, that student Dr. Ben.
Yes.
And with that, we've got a quick update, just an alert, something that we want to bring to your attention. Have you, like so many other people, ever said to yourself, I love the content that the ACA creates, but I just wish that there was some way that I could get it all the time? Well, congratulations, we've got you covered. Check out the new 24/7 AXP TV live stream. You can tune in at any time of the day. and experience a constant stream of shows and clips and specials from over the 26 other seasons of the Atheist Experience. Or you can just simply listen to some of your favorite hosts, discover some new hosts that you've never heard of. You can visit tiny.cc/AXPTV to join in the fun anytime that you want. And with that, we're going to do one more call, and then I think it's about time to wrap things up.
Oh, okay.
And with that, we've got, I don't know, maybe we'll be able to squeeze in an extra one, but because there are actually two that I want to do. So let's see if we can cram in both of them really quick. We'll start with Samuel calling in from Texas. Why do fundamentalists target evolution? Samuel, how are you doing today? Samuel, can you hear us?
Yes.
Hey, there you are. Hello.
Hi. Hello. Forrest, I just want to say real quick, I'm a huge fan of your content. I love your Reacteria series. Paul, I've never heard you on this show before, but very, very pleased. You guys both done a great job of hosting this. But I did want to ask.
Thank you so much.
Out of all of the different theories that we have that like would explain the natural world without the need of a god, why would the creationists go after the one that seems to be the most, or one of the most hard to disprove? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they're kind of setting themselves up for failure.
Well,
Yeah.
as someone who up until recently believed that evolution was evolution and actually garbage, there's a few things. First of all, a lot of theism, at least Christianity and some of the other Abrahamic religions, are based on the specialness of the God wants to have a personal relationship with us, that we are special. And evolution, unlike those other things, attacks specialness. And another thing is that evolution, if you don't understand it, if you let someone describe it to you who doesn't believe it, is entirely counterintuitive, right? So when I was a creationist, the question is, if we evolved from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? Made total sense because I didn't understand what evolution actually entailed. Or if you want to throw at you like dogs don't come from non-dogs, a lot of those slogans, if you don't understand what the theory of evolution posits, those things are more intuitive than the notion that small steps get you a certain distance. So again, other sciences like the age of the Earth, or how far away stars are, or does the rock order make sense given a flood? Those are all kind of boring. No, like those are nebulous and boring and seem distant. But am I an ape is a highly personal question to a theist, because they feel like that makes them less special. And religion, Christianity, is all about, I am so special that the God who created the vastness of space cares about what I had for lunch, and cares about whether I'm doing okay, and about my eternal soul, and wants to spend eternity with me. And if you accept at that point that I am merely, in their view, merely the latest incarnation of life, then that specialness kind of goes away. So from my perspective, at least, that was part of it. And so I don't know if Forrest has anything to add, but that's my personal experience on this. Your mileage may vary.
That is actually like to the letter exactly where I was going to go with it. So it makes me very happy that you would say such a thing, as I don't have a personal experience with it, but like that is what I've been confronted with most of the time, is that, you know, these other talking about the universe and talking about the Big Bang and talking about the age of the Earth and all these things are just mathematics. All these things are just observation. All these things are just telescopes, whatever. But when you're talking about me, you're telling me that I'm just a lowly ape and I'm not this special, fancy, important guy. And it really, you can look at analogs to this, not just talking about evolution, but look at like the discovery of fossils. You know, back in, I think it was the late 1600s, you had Nicolaus Steno, who found they had these things called tungstones. And Nicolaus Steno was like, yo, these tungstones look an awful lot like shark's teeth only they're way bigger,
Megalodon.
and we can't find these sharks anymore. And this was the first understanding that this might be something called a fossil. And that's indeed what it was. They were finding megalodon teeth. And it's like, so if this is the tooth of a shark that isn't around anymore, that's kind of crazy. How can we justify this? How can we explain this? Because at the time, people believed in what was called the Great Chain of Being, which was a hierarchy of all matter and all life that we knew in the universe. And so you had rocks on the bottom and trees a little bit above that, and then the ground-dwelling birds above that, and then the ground-dwelling animals, and then the birds were a little bit more cool, and then humans were the best animals in the whole world. We weren't even really animals. And then there was angels right above us, and then there was God, right? And we had this hierarchy of everything that we knew to exist. And so this idea that there were actually things that we used to live a long time ago that don't live anymore was a very, very controversial idea. It took another over 100 years past that for, we had Buffon coming along trying to figure out, like, maybe there's actually this causal link here. And then we had people like Mary Anning going out and like finding all these plesiosaur fossils. And we had like big whole skeletons. Charles Darwin found lots of fossils. That's one of the things that led him to like coming up with the idea of natural selection, is that like he actually found these extinct animals. It wasn't until Cuvier that he actually came up, like George Cuvier was the one who said, maybe there's this thing called extinction. And that was the first time that concept was actually seriously proposed, was that things could die entirely and not be around anymore. That was a radically world-changing idea because it flew in the face of this idea that everything was made exactly how it was, just like that, and never changed. And so when you add on this fact that not only is life changing, but also we are part of that. We are part of the animals. And not just that, we're part of these ones that throw poop all over each other. We're the crazy, whatever they are. You have this history over and over and over, from the discovery of fossils to the agreement that humans are animals with people like Linnaeus, up to Jane Goodall. At the time of Jane Goodall, we were man the tool maker. That's what was humans. Yeah, we were animals. Fine. Linnaeus was right. But we were the tool making animals. And that's what separated us from the rest of these things. And then Jane Goodall goes out and sees, hey, look, Jonathan Greybeard, the chimpanzee, just stripped all the leaves off a stick and used it to fish for termites. That's not just using the natural world. That is actually fashioning a tool. And she brings that back to Leakey, and Leakey says, well, we either need to redefine tool, redefine man, or accept chimpanzees as humans. What are we going to do? And that is just like the whole like history of this kind of science, is knocking humans down off of the pedestal over and over and over and over. And evolution is the absolute just end all beat all way to do that. You're not that special. You are just another animal. And like the whole world is a part of you just as much as you're a part of it. And that's really, really hard for somebody to accept when they've been raised in a doctrine that teaches you that, like, Paul said, that you are the most special thing in the world and the whole universe was designed with you in mind. That's pretty much the polar opposite of that whole dogma.
I see. I think it's also like, oh man, come on, we got to get rid of the tier list of different animals. I just think that's
that was pretty tight,
bro.
It was good when we had it.
Dang it, we like the tier list. But and then I just had one more thing to bring up, that you were talking about how when you have this idea of like we're special in this certain way, and it's really hard for people to go against that. It's like I noticed I'm in high school, but so I have like in biology, we're going over evolution, and me having, watched your Light of Evolution series and gotten really interested in that, how that whole field of science.
Everybody do that.
By the way. But they didn't, they really just didn't do a good job of going over the exact qualities of how it works. And it seemed like it was like you had just enough wiggle room to allow creationism in there. And I noticed that, and it made me really frustrated that we have this whole beautiful understanding of the whole, like, of how life went on. Like, for example, throughout my biology course, they didn't even once mention abiogenesis, which is like one of the most amazing parts of evolution, in my opinion. But I just think it's like, this is the dominant Christian culture that makes it really hard to show people just how beautiful the universe is and how this constant struggle to keep ourselves above other beings is like, it's not right. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is my view.
It's the cause of a lot of problems. When you think that you're more important than everything else, then you're more likely to exploit everything else. And then we have issues like we have today. And like a couple of things. Number one, I apologize for regurgitating that whole thing about the discovery of fossils when that's in the Light of Evolution videos. And also, so you had to hear that again. And also, your experience with high school biology not really teaching evolution properly or as well as it could be is very common. I frequently talk about, I think it was Penn State did a publication a couple of years ago where they surveyed high school biology teachers across America, and they found that 28% of them, only 28%, actually taught evolution in a manner that was consistent with the implementation of like the National Research Council recommendations for like how to teach the actual evidence for what evolution is and how it works. 28%. 13% of high school biology teachers in this survey actually like actively endorsed creationism, either by like poo-pooing evolution, downplaying it, or like actually spending a significant amount of time trying to talk creationism up or put it in a positive light, or like teaching the controversy, so to speak. And it was only that extra, that whatever 70% or 60% that's left there, that was whatever, that small amount of people, that extra wiggle room, those were the they called them the cautious 60%. They never really endorsed evolution. They didn't say anything negative about it either. They either downplayed it or just ignored it or just kind of like tried to dance around it because they didn't want to get any backlash from parents for indoctrinating their children and all this stuff. So that's very, very common. Is that 73% of the time high school in America is going to either teach you not evolution or actively endorse creationism. And only 28% of the time are you actually going to get a proper education in what evolution is at a high school level. So unfortunately common what you're talking about. And it's part of the reason why I do the things that I do, because that is robbing children of their education and it's breeding the next generation of anti-vaxxers and flat earthers and creationists. Because you teach them that it's okay to just say, I don't understand this, therefore it's not real.
And that's part, it goes back to your first question that you gave, right? Like it's easy for someone to not believe in evolution when they are not taught it correctly. So that makes it even easier. So you can actually do more damage than good by teaching it wrong. And of course, no matter what the topic is, if the only version of an argument you have is from the people who are against it, you are definitely in a straw man situation, and you shouldn't ever be battling a straw man. You need to battle the best version of an argument. I don't care if it's creationism. I don't care what is climate change, vaccines, any topic, political, doesn't matter. Don't accept what an opponent of an idea tells you the idea is. That's a bad starting point in general.
Absolutely. And that's the thing you mentioned earlier on when you used to be a creationist, you thought, why are there still monkeys was a good question.
That was a coherent question to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, when I talk about evolution with people, sometimes I like to ask that question to them, because that way, if they say like, I know, right, that's what I'm saying, then I know it's not their fault that they don't believe in this. They have never actually been taught what evolution actually is. Right. If you think that's a hard-hitting question, if you wonder, how can random chance make something as complicated as an eyeball, is an actual serious question. If you think, why do you have so much faith in Darwin, is an actual serious question, then this is not me being, some elitist asshole. Nope. Like, you don't actually know the actual first thing about what this science is. And therefore you don't believe in it. And that's the problem. It's not that it doesn't make sense, is that you never learn the very basics of it. So like, if your teacher didn't teach it to you properly, ask them, why are there still monkeys if humans came from monkeys? And if they don't have an answer, go somewhere else for your science education. Go talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about. Write to a college professor or something, like whatever you can do. You're going to have a bad time with that teacher.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I stopped listening to that teacher whenever I mentioned the word abiogenesis, and she gave me a blank stare. So you don't have to worry about that.
Okay,
but yeah, thank you. I just really quick want to thank you guys. All the work you're doing at the ACA really means a lot. to a lot of people. Me personally, it's sort of shown me that I'm not the only atheist in existence, which is nice. And
it's hard to remember sometimes.
Yeah. Forrest, I just want to also thank you for your content, because I found the ACA through your content, and your content is really cool.
Oh, great.
Keep up the good work. It was really great.
Well, thank you so much.
Nice to meet you guys. And
it's a pleasure meeting you as well.
Have a fantastic weekend. All right.
All right, man. Take care, Samuel. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
What a pleasant thing. I don't think we've had a single shitty call today.
Well,
just a nice.
I didn't love David Gishgallops, but that's all right.
Yeah, but like we do.
Still a
streaming match. Yeah. We've got a couple of really quickly. I'm going to burn through these super chats as fast as I can, as we can try. We've got 5 minutes left. I wonder if we can squeeze in just one more. Nose kills send €5. Says draw a dot on a balloon and start inflating it. Every part of the balloon is moving away from it. Doesn't mean that it's the center of the balloon. Exactly. That's a great way to talk about the expansion of the universe. Well, I've seen people where people put several dots and they show the same thing with the raisin bread. The farther the dots are apart, the more they spread. The only reason I don't use the balloon analogy is because people who are deliberately trying to be argumentative will then say, oh, so you're saying all the galaxies are on the very edge of the universe and blah, blah, and it just fuck, dude. You know what I mean? But no, that is another great way to teach it to people who are willing to learn something. I love that analogy. We've got Roger Wenzel sent 10 of his dollars to say, oh, my former god, tinnitus, something I suffer from is as proof of God. Wow. Oh, my former god. I love that.
Hey, Roger.
Non-crazy cat lady sent 17, I'm guessing Denmarkian dollars, DKK. I'm not gonna find out. I'll find out later, but you're gonna tell people are gonna put it in the chat, and I'm not gonna listen. I was about to be a spicy boy, and Forrest, do it. Get somebody. Yes, oh no, someone in the chat actually put here in the crew chat, put Danish krona. I'm not gonna listen to you. Denmarkian dollars it is. Get somebody in here advocating for slavery. You'll see it. William Matz or Mateus, I'm not sure, sent $20. Forrest, your face lights up wonderfully when you seem to geek out over science. It's inspiring. The only thing better than learning science is teaching it to other people. The only thing better than learning it is teaching it. It's so cool. Daniel Romero Soul sent $9.99. Just for context, the anti-evolution is only an American phenomenon. It is a shame. There are other countries, but like Canada. As far as like size and credibility, yeah, Canada's bad, Turkey's bad, the UK's got it, everybody's got it, but like it's especially poop-tastic here in America for sure. And then we've got Efioma. I'm assuming I'm probably going to pronounce this very wrong. Efioma Kalu. I didn't pronounce your name right, but you have a cool name. Sent $50. Has the Euphrates River dried up in the past? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, and I Googled it while we were waiting, and the Euphrates drying up. This is from Quora, so take that with a gallon of salt. The Euphrates drying up, it would happen, is the sign of revelation, and now it's happening again. The true date is unknown. Something with a battle of Agamemnon. What? I don't know. Probably because it's a river and rivers do that shit, yo. I have no idea. I'm not a goddamn limnologist. With
Google
that,
is so 2022. You got to chat GPT it now. That's
yeah. I'm not going to scroll through the rest of this because we're trying to end the show in 2 minutes. So really quick, we're going to do one last call because this sounds kind of fun. And we'll take this one as Jason in Nevada. Has human evolution been stunted by modern medicine? Kind of, but no, but not in the way you think. Jason, hi, how are you?
I'm great. I hope you guys are good.
Fantastic.
Cool.
I took this call because this is a really cool thing that I want to talk about really quickly. Did you have anything that you wanted to add to this, or is your question simply just has it been stopped or like whatever?
Well, I know it probably has been stopped because as far as I know, evolution never stops. But I was just wondering with things like all these advances in medicine, like I was thinking to be more specific, if your wisdom tooth got impacted, like a few generations ago, you would get infected and you would die. But now, since we can alleviate that, people aren't dying of it, and now they're going to stick around for a lot longer than if they had to evolve out of our population, I would assume. So I was just wondering,
right,
if we like observe that is actually happening, and if there are like, if that's a good thing, if that's a bad thing for the species, or what. That's sort of what I was asking.
Yeah, it's so we've definitely changed the trajectory of our evolution by changing the selection pressures, and we can see some trends going along with that. We're getting taller and taller because of increased access to nutrition. We're getting bigger and bigger heads, mainly because of cesarean sections. Like there are things like that that are super cool. As far as whether it's a net positive or negative, the cold-hearted, true fact science answer is that there's no such thing as good or bad in evolution. It just is what it is. The actual human answer, as far as like a society is concerned, I'd say it's definitely a positive, because like now we're able to take control of our evolution, and by not losing so many people, number one, we're preserving genetic diversity, which is really good. And also we are able now to kind of modify the selection pressures that we evolve into in a better way, maybe even get to the point where someday we'll be, I don't want to say mature enough as a species, but that is what I mean. Mature enough as a species to be talking about genetic engineering as a serious thing. Because like when you talk about it now, it's like, oh, well, you're going to have designer babies and you want blue eyes and brown hairs and everybody and all these different things. And like, but then when you think about it in terms of possibility, see, the dog agrees. When you talk about in terms of real possibility, you could make sure that nobody ever has asthma, and that everybody has a good metabolism, and that nobody ever has a chromosomal disorder or this. And then the question becomes less, why wouldn't you do that? Or why would you do that? And more like, how could you not? That sounds like an amazing thing to guarantee everybody. But then also you have fucking idiots who take that into like some eugenics territory, because fascists that don't understand biology love to bring up eugenics. So like then that's why I put that caveat, when we are a mature enough species, when we can have this conversation seriously, it'd be cool. But yeah, it's we've definitely changed the selection pressures, and we've definitely changed the evolutionary trajectory, and I would say that's a net positive, but that's just me.
All right, thank you. That's really cool.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah,
have an awesome rest of your day.
See you later.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for calling in. Thank you for being a fan. I appreciate
Loved
it. I just wanted to squeeze that one in there because that's so freaking cool.
I think about that question all the time, and you've affirmed for me that my thinking on that is actually relatively correct. Is that we've in a way lifted ourselves out of natural selection pressures that used to exist, or at least to some extent. And so I love getting that affirmation. Yeah.
And that's the whole, like, the past 100,000, especially the past 20,000 years of human existence has been removing selection pressures, or at least changing them. There's a reason why I don't have to worry about getting eaten by a bear on my way to work, because we've changed that. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And there's some bad sides to that, and there's some good sides to that, but it has an observable effect no matter what you think of it.
Absolutely.
We've got a couple more super chats to crank through. We've got Michael Esplin, $5. Biology question: is it possible to have a species that is descended from two incompatible species? I don't know what you mean by incompatible. Like, do you mean like sexually incompatible? Like they weren't able to breed together? Because then no, you wouldn't have a descendant. But in terms of like they were incompatible like in their environments, and then you have something that evolves into a new environment, yeah, it happens all the time. I'm not sure what you mean, but thank you for the $5. To look up the difference between convergent and divergent evolutionary trajectory, and like maybe that'll kind of answer your question a little bit, because you have two convergent evolution, two different things converging on the same adaptations. That's not exactly becoming one. That's not becoming one species, but in terms of like becoming the same kind of thing, maybe that's a thing you could point to. I don't know. Maybe that's the thing you could play with.
Right. I think he just wants to put alligator semen in a gorilla and see what happens. But
I mean, everybody wants to do that. $20 from Ty. Holy books are just dead trees. Listen to the living forest with 2 R's. Weird, but I like it. William Mateus sent $5 to say it's pronounced Mattis, and I'm still not going to pronounce it Mattis. Thank you, William Mattis. We've got $5 from Pat in the chat. Hey, Forrest, I just bought Genetics Conceptual Approach book that you suggested to a caller some time ago. Can't wait to get into it. I'm glad you picked it up. Like I said, this was my college genetics textbook, and there's newer editions out now. And so, but it's a phenomenal. If you want to get into the nitty gritty of it, it's really cool. I also recommend, if you're reading this one, you might as well also pick up this one. This is Essential Cell Biology by a bunch of people. And this one, if ever you have people call in, because if you ever have a creationist say to you that DNA replication is so perfect and it proofreads itself, DNA proofreads itself, and that proves to me that you can't have this book is the book that I learned how that proofreading happens and why it doesn't work the way creationists think that it does. And I didn't know that I would need that knowledge until the 15th time I got into a creationist argument on YouTube where somebody was like, aha, DNA replication as proofreading. Source, Encyclopedia Britannica. Therefore, there is no evolution. That is an actual thing that's happened about 100 times. Check those out.
A fun way to go broke is to buy every single book that Forrest recommends.
Just you buy the textbook from the last edition, and it'll be $50 instead of $500.
I said it's a fun way to go, but you're definitely still going.
We also have Efio Makalu. I probably pronounced it wrong this time. Sent $5 to say I did a good job with their name, and now I didn't. So good. I'm glad. With that, it's the end of the show. And so really quickly, I want to remind everybody that the question for the week is wrong answers only. Why was Jesus betrayed? Leave your answers in the comment section and we'll pick our top favorite 3 and we'll read them out next week. As far as the ending goes, Paul, I want to give some time for you. I know you're on all sorts of other places beyond this. Where can people find you out there on the internets?
Well, the primary place is on YouTube, although I'm also on the Instagram and Twitter where I have some fun. But Paulogia is the name of a channel. I also have Paulogia Live. So I have scripted, edited cartoons where I usually I deal with experts and we deal in Bible stuff and sometimes in Earth creation stuff. And also Paulogia Live, where this week I'm actually having a conversation with Eric Hovind, which is going to be fun and weird. So come join me for that.
Good luck. Good luck.
Thank you.
Oh, and if you're interested in the Big Bang and why
a book
space conservation makes sense, it's Introduction to Physical Science. This is the 14th edition by Shipman, Wilson, Higgins, and Torres. That's a great one. And then also you can pick up. I got this one loose leaf, y'all. This is nope, that's psychology. Hold on. This is another one that's also loose leaf. It's The Cosmic Perspective by Bennett, Donahue, Schneider, and Voigt. And this is where I've learned most of my introductory stuff about astronomy. This is like a 1,000 level textbook. Anybody, you can pick this up and learn it anytime you want. And that gets you started. And then you go and read this one as you buy the astrobiology. You don't have to buy it. The astrobiology primer is on for free on the line, and you buy it. And you don't. Oh my God, my brain is just shutting off. You don't buy it. God damn. Look up the Astrobiology Primer. It's published by NASA. They're on version 2.0 right now. It's completely free. Anybody can download it. It's only about 100 pages long, and it'll tell you everything that we know about the formation of stars and galaxies and planets and life. It's really fucking cool, and you should check it out. That's what I was trying to say,
Awesome.
And just fucking couldn't. God damn. My brain sometimes, man. Anyway, with that, thank you all so much for tuning in to the Atheist Experience. It's been a phenomenal show. Thank you, Paul, for being such a fantastic co-host. I appreciate having you on. It was a pleasure meeting you. If you have any other questions about science or atheism, call us back next week. We'll be here at the same time, same place. Have an awesome rest of your day and never stop learning. Bye-bye.
Later.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your lies.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.